In the rugged expanse of the untamed American Southwest, a powerful and resilient tribe rose to prominence, their name echoing through history. The Apache. Known for their fierce independence and unbreakable spirit, the Apache were a people whose lives were shaped by relentless battles and an unyielding will to protect their land and way of life. While outsiders often feared their determination and strength, the Apache were more than the myths of cruelty and conflict that others used to define them. Their legacy tells a story of survival, courage, and identity in the face of overwhelming challenges. But the Apache story isn't just about warfare. It's about resilience, culture, and an unshakable connection to their homeland. Welcome to this episode of Natives Journals, where we uncover the deeper truths behind the Apache people's rich history. Together, we'll journey into their vibrant traditions, uncover their spiritual beliefs, and meet their legendary leaders, such as Geronimo, icons of courage whose influence shaped not just their tribe but the very fabric of the American Southwest. The history of the Apache is one of immense strength and tragic injustice. Like so many other Native American tribes, they endured relentless oppression from European settlers and later the U.S. government. Displaced from their ancestral lands and stripped of vital resources, the Apache faced hardships few could imagine. Yet their story is not one of defeat. It's one of survival, cultural preservation, and enduring impact. Join us as we honor their history and explore their profound legacy. As you explore this story, remember to connect with our community by liking and subscribing. It's a journey of discovery you won't want to miss. The name Apache is widely recognized in U.S. history and often romanticized through Hollywood westerns, but the true essence of Apache culture and heritage runs far deeper than these portrayals. The Apache are not a single group, but a constellation of tribes, including the Chiricahua, Jicarilla, correct spelling, Western Apache, Kiowa Apache, Mescalero, and Lipan Apache. The term Apache itself originates from the Zuni word Apache or Apachu, meaning enemy in Spanish. However, the Apache people refer to themselves as Inde or Dine, meaning the people, a name that embodies their identity and spirit. Many of the tribe names we recognize today were imposed by European settlers, replacing the original, deeply meaningful names given by the tribes themselves. Some researchers suggest that the Navajo might be distant relatives of the Apache tribes, although the term Apache encompasses a broad and varied group, leading to differing interpretations. Historically, Apache tribes were spread across the southwestern United States, but their journey is an extraordinary tale of movement and adaptation. Anthropological evidence shows that the Apache people originally lived in the northern plains before migrating from the northwest Pacific coast to the southwest sometime between the 13th and 15th centuries. Unlike other groups who settled in canyonlands, the Apache chose the southern plains of Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico as their home, drawn by the vast, open landscapes that supported their nomadic lifestyle. The Apache people embraced a nomadic way of life, deeply rooted in their connection to the land and its resources. Their survival centered around the mighty buffalo, which provided not only sustenance but also materials for their daily lives. Buffalo meat was a vital part of their diet, while the hides were skillfully crafted into clothing and durable tents to shield them from the elements. Traditional Apache attire, such as buckskin dresses, moccasins, leggings, and tunics, reflected their ingenuity and resourcefulness. To enhance their clothing, they adorned it with beautiful beadwork and feathers, showcasing their artistry and cultural pride. While buffalo was their primary source of food, the Apache also gathered berries and plants during their travels, supplementing their diet with the bounty of the land. However, they held strong beliefs about purity in food and avoided eating fish or bear meat, considering them impure and unsuitable. The Apache social structure was a testament to their values of kinship and leadership. Families were organized into extended groups, with the most respected member serving as chief advisor, safeguarding the well-being of the group. These family units lived near others of the same kind, fostering strong community bonds through shared social, religious, and military activities. Unique among many tribes, Apache society followed a matrilineal system. Upon marriage, husbands joined their wife's family, working and hunting alongside them. In the unfortunate event of a wife's passing, It was customary for a husband to remarry within the family, often choosing the sister or cousin of his late partner. This practice highlighted the balanced roles of both men and women in Apache life, ensuring stability and continuity within their community. The vibrant culture of the Apache people came to life through their annual celebrations, where dances played a central role. Among these was the Sunrise Dance, a profound and sacred ceremony marking a young girl's journey into womanhood. This celebration was not only a rite of passage but also a heartfelt prayer for blessings, strength, and guidance in her future. Another significant ritual was the Dance of the Mountain Spirit, where participants donned intricate masks to embody these powerful beings, honoring their protective and guiding presence. Beyond their spiritual traditions, the Apache built peaceful and cooperative relationships with neighboring groups, creating a thriving network of trade. Through these exchanges, they traded agricultural goods and beautifully crafted pottery for buffalo meat and hides. This harmonious trade system allowed the Apache to focus on their expertise in buffalo hunting while nurturing mutual respect and beneficial ties with surrounding communities. Life among the Apache and Pueblo peoples maintained a delicate balance until the arrival of the Spaniards disrupted their territories. These outsiders not only imposed themselves on the land, but also interrupted the established trade systems between the Pueblo and Apache communities. For the Apache, whose lives were deeply rooted in sacred traditions tied to the land and nature, this disruption was far more than an economic challenge. It was a violation of their way of life. To the Apache, life itself was sacred, as were their customs and laws, which governed every aspect of existence with unwavering precision. Whether in times of celebration or war, their rules were strictly upheld. Disputes within the tribe were resolved with fairness and care. If private resolution failed, the matter would be presented to the tribal chieftain, who led an investigation or trial. Supported by other respected leaders, the chieftain ensured justice was carried out. Remarkably, witnesses spoke freely, without oaths, as trust and honesty were integral to their community. If innocence was proven, the matter ended without further retribution, as personal revenge outside the legal process was strictly forbidden. This commitment to harmony extended beyond social disputes to their behavior in sacred places. For instance, at Salt Lake, a vital source of salt, hunting and disturbing creatures were prohibited, ensuring all beings could access this revered site. Such practices reflected the Apache's profound respect for the natural world. Even in war, the Apache adhered to solemn rituals. Campaigns were planned with care by the War Council, and warriors prepared through ceremonial war dances, their cries echoing with spiritual fervor. Victories were marked with solemn celebrations. Scalps of fallen enemies, viewed as symbols of conquest, were mounted on poles around bonfires during dances. However, these were ultimately discarded as they were considered impurities, further evidence of the Apache's deep connection between warfare, spirituality, and ritual cleansing. Becoming an Apache warrior was no small feat. It was a journey of resilience, discipline, and unwavering commitment. Physical strength, mastery of horse riding, and skill with weapons were merely the foundation. To truly earn a place among the warriors, one had to prove their worth through a rigorous trial that tested not just their abilities, but also their character. Aspiring warriors were required to accompany the war party into battle at least 4 times. During these trials, they lived under strict discipline, forbidden from voicing complaints or speaking out of turn. They assumed the role of humble attendants, caring for horses, cooking meals, and handling essential tasks without being asked, an unspoken expectation of their readiness to serve and anticipate the needs of the group. Their sacrifices didn't end there. They had no say in their meals, accepting whatever was offered to them, often the least desirable portions. This humility was a vital part of their journey, as it symbolized their willingness to endure hardship for the greater good of the tribe. Only after completing these trials, and if every warrior in the group recognized their diligence, prudence, and courage, could they be accepted into the warrior ranks, starting at the lowest level. Yet, even a single dissenting voice among the warriors could deny them this honor, underscoring the high standards and unity of the Apache warrior tradition. The Apache people fiercely protected their land, believing it to be inseparable from their culture and identity. To them, nature was alive with life-giving forces, present in every breath of air, every blade of grass, and every element of the world around them. The land was not just their home, it was a source of beauty, harmony, and power, brimming with life and spiritual energy. Medicine men, like the legendary Geronimo, were seen as vital bridges to this living world. They were believed to have unique connections to the supernatural forces within the land, wielding spiritual power that inspired awe and respect. During this era, Indian spirituality held profound influence, and the abilities of medicine men were central to the Apache way of life. Geronimo, however, stood apart, with a power that many likened to that of a coyote. The coyote, elusive and unpredictable, symbolized cunning and adaptability. Known for its ability to outsmart even the keenest opponent, the coyote's traits mirrored Geronimo's extraordinary skill in navigating and thriving within the natural and spiritual worlds. His connection to this animal exemplified the Apache belief in the profound harmony between humanity, nature, and the spiritual realm. Geronimo, one of the most renowned Apache warriors, carries a complex legacy that reflects both the resilience and tragedy of his people. His journey toward becoming a fierce protector of the Apache began in 1858, rooted in a profound personal loss. That year, a Sonoran military unit launched a brutal attack on the Apache camp of Kaskaskia, killing his mother, wife, and children. This devastating event left an indelible mark on Geronimo, igniting within him an unrelenting drive for vengeance against the Mexicans who had inflicted such pain. Although history remembers him as Geronimo, his true name was Goyakla, meaning he who yawns in his native tongue. Born on June 16, 1829, near the Gila River in present-day Arizona, Goyakla was part of the Chiricahua Apache, a group that had begun transitioning to a settled farming lifestyle. At that time, Apache lands lay within Mexico's borders. Yet, despite being the original inhabitants, the Apaches were denied recognition by the Mexican government, leading to constant conflict. By the 1840s, the Apache people faced the grim reality of annihilation as they resisted Mexico's attempts to take their land and destroy their way of life. The violence escalated with the involvement of American bounty hunters like Stephen Meek, who profited from the suffering of the Apache. These hunters offered gruesome rewards for Apache scalps: $100 for a man, $50 for a woman, and $25 for a child. This dehumanizing practice added another layer of cruelty to the already harsh realities faced by the Apache during Geronimo's youth. The turning point in Geronimo's life came on March 5, 1851, when a force of 400 Mexican soldiers launched a surprise attack on an unprotected Apache camp. The massacre claimed the lives of many women and children, including Geronimo's wife, mother, and children. This harrowing event transformed him from a peaceful figure into the fierce warrior we know today. His sorrow and rage were further compounded by the betrayal he experienced during his journey to negotiate peace, only to return and find his family brutally slaughtered behind him. From that moment, Geronimo became a symbol of resistance, a man shaped by grief and driven by an unwavering commitment to his people. In his autobiography, Geronimo conveyed the deep despair he felt as he witnessed the relentless violence inflicted upon his people. Yet despite these hardships, the Apache remained steadfast and resilient in their struggle against Mexican forces. However, their fight was further complicated by events beyond their control. Following the Mexican-American War, the vast lands of Apache territory were included in the United States' acquisition, a move that fulfilled America's ambition of dominating the Southwest. From the Apache perspective, this land was never Mexico's to give away. It had been their homeland since time immemorial, a sacred place that provided sustenance and supported their way of life. The arrival of a new force, the American settlers, introduced an unsettling shift in this delicate balance. When these settlers first entered Apache country, they were awestruck by the fertile grasslands and abundant resources, ideal for raising cattle and establishing new lives. The Apache, in turn, observed these newcomers with cautious curiosity, often extending gestures of friendship and attempting to understand their ways. Among the settlers were German immigrants, drawn westward by economic hardships and dreams of a better future. However, This tentative peace was soon disrupted by the rise of mining and prospecting as settlers sought gold in Apache lands. The miners' increasing encroachment on sacred Apache territory bred suspicion and anger. What began as curiosity quickly devolved into mistrust and conflict. The more the miners seized, the more the Apache fought to protect their lands. Clashes, shootings, and strained relations marked the growing divide between the Apache and the settlers, as the once promising coexistence gave way to hostility. The arrival of settlers, spurred by the lure of mining and driven by overhunting, ignited deep conflicts with the Apache people. Many settlers ignored treaties and agreements, viewing the Apache not as rightful stewards of the land, but as obstacles to exploitation. By 1861, the fragile peace had shattered completely, plunging the region into war. Mexican incursions into lands that the Apache had inhabited for generations added fuel to an already volatile situation. Geronimo and other Apache leaders rose to defend their people and their way of life, launching a fierce resistance that would span 25 years and engulf the Southwest in conflict. Their unyielding fight for survival came at a cost. Fear and hatred of the Apache spread among settlers, leading to the formation of vigilante groups determined to eradicate the Apache presence. In 1871, a horrific event shook Apache history, the Camp Grant massacre, led by William Ory, where over 100 Apache women and children were brutally slaughtered. This act of violence sent shockwaves across the nation, sparking public outrage and bringing the plight of the Apache people into stark focus. In response, the U.S. government began advocating for a shift in policy, promoting the establishment of Indian colonies as a way to secure and pacify the West, a goal aimed at appeasing both settlers and native tribes. While some settlers extended gestures of friendship to the Apache, many others viewed them as adversaries, paving the way for a turbulent era marked by escalating violence and the systematic breaking of treaties. As part of this new policy, the government introduced reservations, presenting them as a promise of a permanent home for Native Americans. Yet for the Apache, these reservations represented confinement and a forced departure from their ancestral lands, a painful chapter in their enduring struggle for survival and self-determination. By 1872, many Apache groups, including the Chiricahua Apaches, had been confined to reservations on their ancestral lands in Arizona. The Chiricahua Reservation, nestled in southeastern Arizona near Fort Bowie, stood as a poignant reminder of the region where the Apache Wars had erupted. In an unexpected turn, the Chiricahuas and soldiers, once bitter enemies, began to forge surprising friendships, bridging the divide created by years of conflict. For a time, the reservations brought a fragile peace and a sense of stability. The Chiricahuas found solace in their homeland, surrounded by the mountains that provided hunting grounds and access to vital water sources. These familiar landscapes allowed them to preserve a connection to their roots and a semblance of freedom. Initially viewed as tools of control, reservations also offered Native American communities a measure of security and autonomy in uncertain times. The U.S. government, however, failed to deliver on its promises. While they encouraged the Chiricahuas to farm, the resources and support needed to succeed were sorely lacking. The land was unsuitable for raising cattle, and essential supplies were often withheld. Despite these challenges, the Chiricahuas endured, choosing peace even in the face of starvation. With proper guidance and resources, they could have thrived, continuing their legacy as stewards of the land they called home. Despite initial hopes for peace, 1876 marked a devastating shift in federal policy. The Chiricahua Reservation was closed, and the Chiricahuas, alongside many other Apache groups in Arizona, were forcibly relocated to San Carlos. This decision disrupted the progress that had been made and represented a major turning point. The federal government's goal was clear: to centralize control over the Apache people and open Chiricahua lands for settlement and mining. At Fort Bowie, the commander issued a stark warning that the closure of the reservation could lead to war. A military escort arrived to move the Chiricahuas to San Carlos, but the cost of peace was too high for some. Among them was Geronimo, who, driven by the betrayals of the past, refused to surrender his homeland. Leading a group of 400 Chiricahuas, he fled to Mexico, reigniting rebellion and gaining widespread attention. His defiance resonated through his bold declaration: "We won't yield our land, we'll fight to defend it." This unwavering stance symbolized the determination of his people to resist relocation and maintain their way of life. Within weeks, tension boiled over. Chiricahua warriors, angered by the loss of their land, struck back, killing 68 settlers in a region that had experienced peace for 4 years. These acts fueled sensationalized media portrayals, painting the Chiricahuas as savage obstacles to the settlers' ambitions in the Southwest. The government and army quickly recognized that the conflict would persist unless Geronimo and the dissident Chiricahuas were brought to heel. Despite attempts by others to dissuade him, Geronimo's resolve remained unshaken. His raids and defiance made him infamous, with every skirmish and act of resistance attributed to his leadership. Ultimately, he became a wanted man. His first and only capture occurred when an Indian agent in San Carlos discovered his location in New Mexico. With the assistance of Apache police, Geronimo was seized and brought back to San Carlos in chains, a significant moment in the ongoing struggle between the Apache and the forces determined to control them. The Chiricahuas, fiercely attached to their homeland, struggled to adapt to life at San Carlos, a reservation that stood in stark contrast to the land they had known and loved. While their mountainous homeland was rich with trees, flowing water, and life-sustaining resources, San Carlos was barren, arid, and inhospitable, a dusty, desolate place that remains so to this day. For the Chiricahuas, being forcibly removed from their familiar environment to this harsh terrain was a devastating blow, one they found unbearable. This deep connection to their homeland and the harsh reality of San Carlos turned the relocation into a painful chapter in Apache history. The reservation's conditions were dire. Supplies often failed to reach their intended recipients, stolen along the way. Indian agents assigned to manage the reservation seemed indifferent to the Apache's struggles, offering little help or empathy. Meanwhile, soldiers stationed there treated the Apaches with cruelty and disrespect, dehumanizing them in their most vulnerable moments. By 1878, after enduring 2 grueling years at San Carlos, the Chiricahuas were moved again to the nearby Fort Apache reservation. Though this marked the apparent end of the land war, it ignited a cultural battle. The Apache traditions, deeply rooted in their identity, came under threat from external pressures. A native religious movement arose in an effort to preserve their spiritual practices, but the U.S. Army brutally suppressed it, going as far as killing an influential medicine man, a devastating blow to the Apache's spiritual and cultural resilience. Within 2 years, Geronimo, Nachi, and around 100 other Chiricahuas found life on the reservation unbearable. Faced with the harsh conditions and broken promises, they chose once again to escape, seeking freedom beyond the grasp of the U.S. government. Their departure sparked a renewed pursuit by the Army, culminating in a pivotal peace conference with General Crook at Cañon de los Muertos in early 1886. This meeting carried the fragile hope of finally ending the Apache Wars. General Crook, well aware of the Chiricahuas' unmatched skill and ability to elude capture, approached the situation with caution. He knew that any misstep might provoke distrust or hostility, putting his life and the fragile negotiations at risk. Over the course of several days, Crook engaged in direct talks with Geronimo and his group. Notably, he brought no troops to these discussions, choosing instead to rely on mutual respect and diplomacy. Geronimo, weary from years of conflict, expressed his desire to leave the past behind and seek justice for the wrongs committed against his people. Crook, understanding the weight of Geronimo's words, presented him with a stark choice: continue the fight or surrender unconditionally. A return to the reservation immediately was off the table, but the discussions paved the way for a compromise. In subsequent meetings, Geronimo, Nachi, and other Chiricahua leaders agreed to surrender under the condition that, after a few years of exile away from the Southwest, they would be allowed to return to their homeland. This agreement marked a critical turning point in the long and arduous conflict between the Apache and the U.S. government, offering a glimpse of hope for peace. Eventually, Geronimo made the heart-wrenching decision to surrender, stating that his choice was driven by a desire to prevent the extinction of his people. Alongside him, leaders like Chihuahua and Loco also chose to lay down their arms. recognizing the futility of continuing the fight against the overwhelming numbers of white settlers and Mexican forces. Their fear of total annihilation outweighed their determination to resist. However, shortly after the surrender, a single act of betrayal reignited Geronimo's resolve. A rebellious white man threatened him, claiming he would be hanged for murder in Arizona, where he was already under indictment. This ominous warning shattered any sense of security and pushed Geronimo to take action. Driven by the fear of prosecution and fueled by his unyielding spirit, Geronimo, Nachi, and a small band of followers made a daring escape. They fled south into the rugged terrain of the Sierra Madre, determined to continue their campaign for freedom and survival. Their escape marked yet another chapter in their ongoing struggle, underscoring the resilience and defiance that defined Geronimo's leadership. Upon learning of Geronimo's daring escape, General Crook promptly reported the news to his superior, General Sheridan, who reacted with surprise and concern. Crook, confident in the loyalty of his scouts, defended their actions, asserting that they could not have prevented Geronimo's departure. However, this incident led to a significant rift between the two generals, as Sheridan ordered a shift in Crook's strategy. Frustrated and deeply attached to the approach he had developed over 8 years in the region, Crook made a difficult decision. Believing his strategy to be the most effective in bringing a resolution to the Apache conflict, he requested relief from his command. This marked a turning point in the relentless pursuit of Geronimo and the Chiricahuas, signaling the end of Crook's direct involvement. In Crook's place, General Nelson A. Miles took command, bringing with him a new approach to warfare against the Apache. Miles, convinced that modern intelligence and advanced equipment could overpower the Chiricahuas, deployed a formidable force of 5,000 men, 1/4 of the entire U.S. Army. His strategy aimed to apply constant pressure, leaving the Chiricahuas with no choice but to surrender. Despite the overwhelming military presence, Geronimo and his people relied on their intimate knowledge of the land and unmatched survival skills. The Chiricahuas employed hit-and-run tactics, evading their pursuers and making it nearly impossible for the soldiers to track them. Clashes were fierce and costly, as evidenced by injuries like Corporal Scott's leg amputation during a battle near the Santa Barbara Peaks. For 6 grueling months, Geronimo's mastery of the terrain, water sources, and strategic movements allowed him and his people to outmaneuver their enemies, continuing their fight for freedom against all odds. After years of relentless pursuit, exhaustion from constant evasion began to take its toll on Geronimo and his band. Word reached Fort Apache that Geronimo might finally be open to surrender talks, offering a glimmer of hope in their long and grueling conflict. Among the Apache, frustration simmered. Many elders resented Geronimo, blaming him for the needless deaths of innocent women, children, and mothers, all sacrificed in the defense of their homeland. The mounting loss of life led to growing pleas for Geronimo to surrender and bring the conflict to an end. The U.S. Army turned to 2 Chiricahua scouts, Kaida and his relative Martin, to locate Geronimo in Mexico. Their deep connection to Geronimo, they were part of his extended family, made them ideal intermediaries. Accompanying them was Lieutenant Charles Gatewood, a man Geronimo knew and trusted, tasked with delivering terms for surrender. The scouts played a crucial role, leveraging their bond with Geronimo's band to initiate communication. Tracking Geronimo's group to a well-known stronghold in the Taurus Mountains, 50 miles south of the border, Seda and Martin separated from Gatewood's party to approach the hideout. As they climbed toward the hostile camp, Kaida's grandfather, serving as a lookout with binoculars, spotted movement below. Recognizing the group carrying a white flag as their own people, a heated debate followed. Should they let them approach or stick to strict instructions not to engage? After lengthy discussions, Martin and Kaida succeeded in persuading Geronimo, Naichi, and others to meet Gatewood by the river. In this fateful meeting, Gatewood presented Geronimo with a stark choice: surrender or face a relentless campaign to the very end. To strengthen his plea, Gatewood revealed a heartbreaking truth. Apache families at Fort Apache, including Ruidaro's father, were being transported to Florida as prisoners of war. Soldiers had rounded up all the Apaches, conducted a roll call, and loaded them into wagons and trains, treating them like cattle. The weight of this reality, combined with exhaustion and the pleas of his people, pushed Geronimo closer to making his final decision. The news of their family's plight left Geronimo's small band feeling deeply isolated. As the relentless pursuit continued, they gathered to hold a solemn meeting. In this critical moment, Geronimo, Naichi, and a few others faced an agonizing decision. They realized they could no longer endure the loss of more lives, innocent women, elders, and children, who had suffered in their struggle to protect their way of life. This painful realization led to a profound decision. Most of the chiefs, along with their families, chose to surrender to save their people from further devastation. For Geronimo and his closest followers, resistance might have continued had they been entirely on their own. But the weight of their community's suffering guided them toward peace. On September 4th, 1886, Geronimo finally surrendered, marking the end of an era. The historic event took place at Skeleton Canyon in southeastern Arizona, where a humble pile of rocks now stands as a silent testament to the moment. This surrender symbolized the conclusion of 25 years of Apache warfare, the last resistance by Southwest Native Americans. For the Chiricahuas, the surrender marked a heartbreaking new reality. The land they had fought so fiercely to protect, the land they called home for countless generations, would now exist only in their memories. Their struggle, while ending in loss, stands as a testament to their unyielding spirit and deep connection to their homeland. After their surrender, Geronimo, Naichi, and other Chiricahua leaders were swiftly imprisoned at Fort Bowie, joined by Chiricahua scouts like Cayeta and Martin, who had once been instrumental in helping the army locate the last holdouts. This act of betrayal struck a deep blow to the Chiricahuas. Not only had they lost their loyal scouts, but they also saw General Miles disregard the terms of surrender previously agreed upon by the Apaches and General Crook. For the Chiricahuas, these broken promises and violated treaties were devastating. In their culture, a word given was sacred, yet the U.S. government's actions rendered their hopes futile. Instead of returning home as promised, they endured 27 years of exile, far longer than the 2 years they had been led to expect. Geronimo, Naichi, and their small band were forcibly removed from Arizona, their ancestral homeland, and sent to Florida by train, leaving behind everything they held dear. Political influence from Arizona ensured the Chiricahuas were sent as far away as possible, leading them to St. Augustine, Florida. After the surrender, the group was divided between various forts. Some, including Geronimo, were taken to Fort Pickens in western Florida, while around 400 were crowded into the harsh confines of Fort Marion on the Atlantic coast. Life in Florida was a stark and painful contrast to the arid yet familiar landscapes of their southwest homeland. The oppressive heat, muggy air, and overcrowded conditions made survival challenging. Diseases like malaria and yellow fever, unfamiliar and relentless, ravaged their population. Every day, bodies were carried out of the forts, and many Chiricahuas succumbed to these illnesses. Despite the overwhelming hardships, the Chiricahuas clung fiercely to their cultural identity and solidarity. This resilience became their shield against the erosion of their traditions. Yet another heartbreaking separation loomed. Many Chiricahua children were sent to a school for Indians in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, tearing them away from their families. At Carlisle, the climate and poor conditions led to tuberculosis outbreaks, and tragically, many of these children never returned home. The school also forced cultural assimilation, cutting their hair, replacing traditional clothing with Western styles, and attempting to erase their Apache identity. Even in the face of these challenges, the Chiricahuas refused to let their culture fade. Their spirit and identity remained strong, a testament to their enduring resilience despite profound suffering and loss. Life within the overcrowded forts of Florida became unbearable for the Chiricahuas, forcing their relocation to Mount Vernon Barracks near Mobile, Alabama. Yet this move offered little respite. The oppressive, stagnant air and confined spaces of Alabama stood in sharp contrast to the open landscapes of their beloved homeland, amplifying their sense of loss. By 1896, after enduring years in the Deep South, they were relocated once again, this time to Fort Sill in Oklahoma, on land provided by the Comanche and Kiowa. The Chiricahuas' arrival at Fort Sill was deeply emotional. As night fell, the sound of coyotes howling in the distance stirred powerful feelings of nostalgia, reminding them of the life they had left behind. At Fort Sill, they experienced a degree of stability. Working with cattle and living on a true reservation brought a sense of purpose and familiarity, marking a significant shift from the hardships they had previously endured. For Geronimo, the surrender in 1886 was not the end of his journey, but the beginning of a new chapter. He spent the next 23 years at Fort Sill, transitioning into a revered elder and symbol of the Apache spirit. Over time, he became a well-known figure beyond the Chiricahua community, attending fairs and festivals celebrating the Old West. His appearances at Wild West shows made him a celebrity, admired by many for his resilience and legendary status. While Naiche converted to Christianity during this period, Geronimo maintained his traditional Apache practices, performing healing ceremonies and preserving his spiritual connection to his people. Though he occasionally attended church, his unwavering dedication to Apache traditions defined his later years. Yet, as he aged, his belief in his protective powers began to fade. Tragically, Geronimo's life came to an end in 1909 under unfortunate circumstances. One night, while intoxicated, he fell from his horse and was unable to return indoors. Exposed to the cold overnight, he succumbed to hypothermia. At 80 years old, his passing marked the loss of a towering figure in Apache history, a man whose life reflected both the struggles and indomitable spirit of his people. While often depicted as a relentless savage or a larger-than-life myth, Geronimo was, in truth, a man fiercely devoted to his homeland and way of life. His spirit embodied the resilience and pride of the Apache people. In his later years, he may have harbored regrets about surrendering, longing to have taken his final breath in the land of his ancestors. Far from the caricature of the Wild West, Geronimo was a proud leader, a symbol of the Apache's enduring resistance to oppression. Geronimo represented the last stand of the Apache against the tide of Western expansion. Known for their fierce warrior spirit, the Apache, under his leadership, launched significant uprisings against the encroaching influence of the U.S. government. His steadfast resistance earned him admiration not only from his own people, but also from those who opposed him, an enduring testament to his character and resolve. While many Native American groups surrendered in the early 1870s, the Apache held fast to their traditions and continued their raids in defense of their way of life. By the late 19th century, however, the U.S. government had initiated aggressive assimilation programs, aiming to integrate Native tribes into white American society. Over time, many Apache families resettled in Mexico and the United States, forging new lives but never forgetting their roots. Today, the Apache people maintain a strong presence, with the largest populations residing in Oklahoma, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. In 1913, after 27 years of captivity, the Chiricahuas were finally released. However, they were unable to return to their homeland, which had become part of Fort Sill Army Base. Faced with a choice, 82 Chiricahuas chose to stay in Oklahoma, while 187 moved to join the Mescalero Apaches in New Mexico, whose support during their years on the run had forged a lasting bond. This relocation marked a fresh beginning for the Chiricahuas, but the memory of their homeland continued to resonate deeply within them. Though they adapted and thrived in new lands, the connection to their ancestral roots remained unbroken, a powerful reminder of their enduring strength and unity. Many Chiricahuas eventually returned to Arizona, drawn to the sacred site at Skeleton Canyon, where a humble rock pile stands as a testament to their ancestors' legacy. Here they gathered to honor the memory of those who had fought bravely to preserve their land, culture, and way of life. This place, steeped in history and meaning, serves as a powerful reminder of their enduring spirit. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rich and poignant history of the Apache people. If this story moved or inspired you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue exploring captivating stories and untold truths from history. Click the notification bell to stay updated and be among the first to enjoy our latest content. Your support helps us bring these incredible tales to life. Thank you for being part of our community.